For years, Robyn Brown lived on the periphery of a family united by religion, polygamy and tenuous peace. But now her name resonates in courtrooms and hijacks social media, where rumors of deceit mushroomed into calls for accountability too laden to be shrugged off. Did Robyn Brown destroy the Brown family? As court papers emerge and archival footage is rerun through critical eyes, an unsettling story emerges. Once the peacemaker, Robyn now faces accusations of alienating Cody, running off the other wives, and taking the empire they constructed together down with her. Within the courtroom, she is calm, silent, collected, nearly scripted, while Christine, Janelle, and even Mary struggle to reassemble fragments of themselves. Robyn remains steadfastly by Cody's side, unshakable in her allegiance, but bitterly resented more than ever before. And this time, that allegiance could be a devastating price. With a verdict imminent, she stands to lose not only her position in the family, but whatever it is that she and Cody stand accused of constructing in hiding. Reality television has turned into an accounting, but it wasn't always like this quietly. Robyn slipped into the Brown home covered in glittering warm smiles and benign intentions, introduced to viewers as the sweet soul who infused a tired foundation with new life. But beyond the glossy cuts of reality television, maybe something else was brewing. Now her name does not mean comfort but conflict, and with courtroom lights blazing and sealed records bursting open, the truth can no longer be hidden. Robyn did not just become a part of the family. Many now think she ended it, because the whispers of recent months turn to accusations that menace everything. What started out as court proceedings in regards to asset division and custody disputes has now evolved into something much more explosive, as a private investigation allegedly uncovered a trail of vanished trust funds, suspect real estate transactions, and unrecorded family loans that vanished into thin air. And at the center of most of these transactions stands Robyn. Where they once viewed her as the wife who yearned for togetherness, now she is accused of covertly gathering power in the name of finding security. Where Robyn maintains that her motives were protection, others claim they were control, and control abused always comes at a cost. Christine's leaving was the initial crack, a moment they saw as sorrowful and regretful, though few understood the intensity of the rift that lay behind it. Leaked testimony from what is said to be sealed documents shows Christine stating Robyn was never a real sister wife, but rather a wedge inserted into the family, which she willingly accepted. Mary, who had previously been so devoted and demure, later confessed she felt ignored, degraded, even manipulated, while Janelle, the most pragmatic of the group, supposedly submitted papers reporting suspicious gaps in shared financial accounts that only Robyn and Cody could access. On television, TLC showed smiles and harmony, but the paper record indicated something far different. And the cracks were not limited to the wives. Two former producers of the show have allegedly approached lawyers to say that important family decisions beamed before millions were not only manipulated but actually staged, managed by Robyn to defend herself and cut off the others. Viewers used to be puzzled by Robyn's frequent tears. Was it real sorrow or an orchestrated act? As the Brown family fell apart in public, Robyn and Cody huddled quietly behind closed doors. Together, untouchable and more defiant. Silence, however, was never so much about protection as preparation. The most eye-opening disclosure emerged mere days before the final court hearing, when a subpoenaed email exchange between Robyn and a private estate lawyer indicated intentional financial redistricting months prior to Christine's exit, when all the wives were still under the illusion of equality. In a single email, Robyn seemed to inquire how they might lock up what is ours in case the house is falling apart. Sent well almost a year prior to the actual breakup. The suggestion was obvious. She foresaw the end and prepared for it. If betrayal has a calling card, many now think Robyn presented it first. With the verdict only days away, public opinion remains split. Some see Robyn as a victim, bullied into staying by a man whose kingdom was collapsing. Others see her as the manipulator, cleverly looking after herself and engineering decisions that destroyed trust irreparably. With Cody again under legal scrutiny, Robyn remains at his shoulder, pale, still, enigmatic, saying nothing to the press and nothing online, but requiring nothing. For when the storm subsides, it is usually the quietest person who stands in the very middle. And now rumors gather. The judge can unseal parts of the case if new evidence appears, including depositions from the elder children, unseen footage, and bank statements related to a now dissolved LLC. If those documents are made public, they won't just alter how fans think about Robyn, they could spark a full-scale investigation into financial exploitation in polygamous systems, specifically under the glare of reality television. What started as a family show might now establish legal and media precedent, clouding the border between entertainment and responsibility. This is no longer divorce. It is about legacy and accountability. But amidst it all, Robyn stays with Cody. They sit together in court. They leave together outside. No cameras, no words, just two bodies huddled to each other amidst the devastation. To some, that connection is love. To others, pure survival. Maybe, in reality, it is both. But whether she is a manipulated martyr or a deliberate manipulator, one thing is certain. Robyn Brown is no longer a supporting player. She is the narrative itself, and its conclusion remains to be written. The courthouse steps were strangely quiet that morning, devoid of paparazzi, populated only by hushed whispers behind colored glass and closed doors. 3 minutes to the hearing. Robyn arrived, attired in a demure navy outfit, accompanied by lawyers. The woman who had once cried on television reality shows now had a face carved not for sympathy, but for tact. This was no ordinary divorce case or even family feud. It was something much more serious, a matter of broken trust, sudden changes in property, mysterious vacancies in bank accounts, and signatures that should never have been there. It was a matter of intent, whether or not Robyn had orchestrated the breaking up of a family behind closed doors for her own survival. And for the first time since her television debut, the story was no longer hers to command. The secrets tend to stay underground for years, until financial exigencies pull them to the surface. And the Brown family saga in court has now come to that juncture. The court had already been shown bits of evidence, testimonies by accountants, legal affidavits interns, and records of estates obtained by subpoena. But this meeting heralded the start of something much more extensive, a complete reconstruction of the timeline. All the major choices taken since Robyn joined were now in question, not as a series of emotional dilemmas for reality television, but as deals, each possibly leading to a greater game plan. The analysis started with the move to Flagstaff. To the public, it seemed like a new beginning, but on paper, it was a fiscal and logistical night. Several properties were bought in quick succession. Titles were being transferred between LLCs and more. Only Cody and Robyn's names were left on papers, while the others' names quietly vanished. Janelle's property was never properly finalized. Mary's cabin inexplicably stalled. And Christine, it emerged, had been excluded from fundamental financial decisions altogether. What was once brushed aside as miscommunication now looked, under oath, like deliberate exclusion. As one forensic accountant bluntly stated, these patterns don't suggest mismanagement, they suggest isolation. Power, the court noted, does not always scream. It sometimes signs quietly in documents. The prosecution then introduced a new layer of evidence, a string of emails exchanged between Robyn and a family financial advisor just weeks before the Flagstaff relocation. The tone was professional, but the content was chilling. Robyn specifically requested a breakdown of how each wife's name could be systematically disentangled from major assets ahead of the move. There was no plural, family consultation mentioned, just Robyn and Cody, with a sense of urgency that now appeared to be orchestrated. And dominating it all towered the trust fund. The Browns had long presented themselves as a family dedicated to creating a financial legacy for their numerous children. But beneath the well-constructed image, the reality was more complex. In secret, a private education trust had been set up with funds made over the early years of the show, with each child guaranteed entry as a beneficiary. But only 2 years ago, the trust was secretly modified, and 6 children were erased from the list, Christine's daughter and Janelle's son among them. While Robyn's children were safely included, where loyalty was concerned, numbers spoke louder. Christine, absent from court, made herself heard through written statements. In one affidavit, she stated, "I didn't leave because of Robyn. I left because I was no longer allowed to belong." The words registered clearly on the judge's face, a momentary look of discomfort giving away the seriousness of the accusation. In plural marriage, membership is not a right, but a promise. And if Robyn had used that tie to preserve her own spot and demolish others, the consequences were catastrophic. Beyond the court, Robyn's silence polarized opinion. Some saw it as poise, others as culpability. But within, her refusal to answer or refute any accusation merely added to the story developing about her. It was as if the court fight were merely another performance she had mastered ahead of time, for one who had been used to living life on television. Reality itself appeared to be powerless to rattle her. By halfway through the session, focus turned to the family's financial arrangements, with TLC, formerly confidential, redacted versions of the Browns' contracts were introduced into evidence, and what they contained was nothing short of incendiary. In subsequent seasons, when the wives' tensions reached boiling points, there was a new behind, the scene's incentive, a bonus formula based on a plan to maintain screen cohesion. However, only one wife had asked for such a provision. Robyn. The clause provided that a money bonus was awarded only in the event that the family stayed intact, legally or spiritually, for at least 2 more seasons, leaving Robyn with a powerful financial incentive to hold out the inevitable disintegration as the other wives disintegrated emotionally. The session for the day ended in suppressed whispers, only interrupted by the signing of a piece of paper that raised more questions than answers. But one thing had become irrefutable. Robyn was not just a player in the Browns' drama. She was a strategist, playing an empire of emotional connections like a chessboard. And now the chessboard had been turned over. For a person whose every step was tied to survival, calm was never the objective. While courtroom lights danced across tidily stacked case files and yellowed receipts, Robyn sat poised, her serenity as calculated as it was unnerving. But the prosecution was no longer satisfied with freezing this tale into one moment. The upcoming phase of hearings, they announced, would not be about hotly contested documents or disputed land, but about origin, motive, and pattern. In order to fully grasp the Browns' downfall, the court would have to rewind, not merely to Flagstaff or Las Vegas, but to the period before cameras ever started rolling, before Robyn bore the Brown name, to another last name, another spouse, and another wife entirely. The past, it appeared, had not vanished. It had merely been biding its time, and that morning's freshly filed documents, divorce papers from Robyn's initial marriage, custody files and financial revelations, spoke volumes, not in what they necessarily claimed, but in unspoken insinuations that shifted the mood in the courtroom. It was not what was said, but how it was said. The charges of manipulation, alienation, and deliberate control that now framed the image of Robyn. Her ex-husband, who for years had said nothing, had made a small but biting entry into the record. She always knew what she wanted. She wasn't crazy, she was calculating. That word, calculating, has stuck to her reputation ever since. Early on, Robyn had portrayed herself publicly as a heartbroken woman, a survivor of a system in shambles, and audiences had lapped up this figure of sympathy. Behind the scenes, however, ominous patterns had begun to emerge. Carefully constructed friendships with church leaders, custody filings where assets seemed to be placed ahead of people, and friendships that slipped quietly away, questions left unasked. And then Cody. Odds times, ruin doesn't come in the form of chaos, but in disguise as rescue. The court went back to old diary entries, previously leaked by a far-off relative and long since forgotten, in which Robyn had admitted to a desire not only for belonging, but for dominance. "I don't want to be someone's third or fourth.